Well, welcome to this edition of Locker Room Chat, brought to you by the Tacoma Pierce County Sports Museum and Rainer Asphalt and Concrete, the number one asphalt and concrete repair contractor in the Tacoma and Seattle area for quality workmanship. Top-notch customer service. Contact Rainer Asphalt at rainerasphalt.com. Let them know you heard about them on Locker Room Chat, as we have a very special guest with us today. We have George Grant, a standout at Stadium High School, two-sport athlete, also the University of Washington. George, it's great to chat with you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Larry, how are you?
I'm doing very well. We are both Stadium grads, so I'm looking forward to this conversation especially. Uh, what do you remember about your time at Stadium High School and being an athlete there?
Well, first of all, I didn't know I was going to go to Stadium High School because I actually went to Galt Junior High, but my folks moved over there and they kind of forced me to go to Stadium. I met with the school board or with one of the guys of the office, and I asked if I could go to Lincoln. He said no, and he said I was an athlete, and I told him I wasn't very good, and he said that's not what I heard. So I ended up at Stadium.
Did you really think you weren't very good athlete at the time?
Not really, but I was trying to make sure I could go to Lincoln.
Well, it seems like going to Stadium worked out for you.
Yes, it did. I was the only sophomore on the varsity team in basketball and the only sophomore on the baseball team as a sophomore. And so, it was, like I said, it turned out okay. In fact, in basketball, my sophomore year, we ended up taking third in the state. And so that turned out, like I said, very good.
As a kid growing up, were you always a multi-sport athlete?
Yeah. People used to ask me, which one do you like best? And I said, it depends on what time of the year it is. I said, when the sun is out, I want to be on the baseball field. When it's raining and everything, I want to be indoors. I started at the boys club. They were my savior, I think, and got me started in athletics. In fact, I played on my first organized basketball team when I was 12 at the boys club. And interesting that all 5 kids on that team end up starting for high schools.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple were brothers and they started over at Bellarmine, and 2 of them were at Lincoln, and I ended up at Stadium.
You graduated from Stadium in 1956. What was going to school at Stadium like then?
Well, it was great. I mean, everybody talked about the Brown Castle, and it was good. You had a beautiful view of the water on the backside and everything, and I had got a good education. The teachers I had were great, and I enjoyed my time there. It was tough for me to start because I really didn't know anybody when I came in there, other than a few athletes that I played against in junior high. But as far as not going to Jason Fleas, as we called it, or Mason, I was not in with anybody there.
Where did you guys play baseball then?
We turned out at Jefferson Park.
Oh yeah.
And that was tough because as a sophomore, we had to get from Stadium there every night on our own. So it was not easy trying to get a ride every time.
Yeah, I went through the same thing many years later. So yeah, we played at Jefferson Park as well. So nothing changed through all those years. Now, going to the University of Washington, was that always where you wanted to be? How did you make the choice?
Well, it was a crazy thing. I was fortunate enough my junior year in high school. I played for the Cheney Studs, and we left in 1955 and went back and played in the national tournament with Ben Cheney sponsored us, and we took second in the nation. And I was like 3 weeks late for school. We didn't get back till almost about the 20th of September. And the same thing happened the next year. And I mean, this is a crazy story because I went back and I was playing with Cheney, and then I got picked up with the Stanley Schumann, and we went back and won the national title. And I came back in September, and I'd not told anybody where I was going to college. I was so busy. I'd gone through the process, and it wasn't as long as it is today. And so when I got home, I decided, geez, I better call somebody. So I called Tippy Dye and said, I decided to come to Washington. And he said, oh, wow, I got a problem. He said, I don't have a scholarship available right now. I said, oh, okay, I'll just go to Seattle U or Washington State. He said, no. And he said, don't you play baseball? And I said, yes. And he said, let me work on something. So he went to the baseball coach, and Dale Parker knew about me, and he gave him a scholarship. So the first year I went to the UW, I was on a baseball scholarship. And the next 3 years, I was on a basketball scholarship.
Wow. So they worked it out.
They did. And it was a tough time for me because all the athletes had pre-registered. When I came back, I had to go through the crazy registering process, and it took me hours to get signed up for all my classes.
Well, before we get back to UW, you mentioned the Cheney Studs, and Ben Cheney specifically, of course, was a name that everyone in Tacoma knows. What do you remember about Ben Cheney?
Well, he was a great person, and he loved athletics, and he sponsored everything from, the young kids all the way up through everything. And I played for Cheney for years, not only in when I was there young, even when I came back from pro ball, I went back and played for Cheney, and then I coached the Cheney Stud baseball team. And I was also playing on the Cheney Stud basketball team, and I was coaching it as well. So I've spent a lot of years in the Cheney organization, and with Gene Anderson was the person at the lumber company that was really kind of took care of all of us. But one interesting story with Ben was that in that year when I was, first of all, both in 1955 and 56, I'm the youngest guy on the team. I'm the only guy in high school on the team where the Cheney won. And I was the youngest one on the Stanley Schumann. I was 21, and the youngest guy close to me was 23, and they were all older than that.
Wow.
And so, but Ben Cheney flew back in 1955 to Battle Creek, Michigan for the finals. And we went in, and when he got there, we went into this room, and they had all these trophies sitting there. And they were really big, tall trophies and individual trophies and all that. And so Ben took a picture with about 5 of us that were in there. And so when we got back to the motel and everything, Joe Budnick was our coach. He called us together and said, Ben said, if you take first or second, he'll fly you all home, because we had taken the train out. We'd gone from Tacoma to Watertown, South Dakota, and then the train from there to Battle Creek after we'd won the Western Regionals. And we ended up taking second. And so Ben flew us all home.
That's amazing. That sounds like a long train trip.
Oh, it was. I've made that many of times.
So how long of a time period was this? Like, how long were you gone?
Well, usually it took, probably, let's see, I want to say 3 days on the train, maybe only 2 days on the train. And then we played for three days, something like that, in the tournament. And then we get on another one and go to Battle Creek for another day or two. And
wow.
And then we would, if we hadn't won there, we would have taken the train back home. And it was interesting because I never took the train home, other than, let's see, I guess I did in the year with the Schumann. I guess we did. But that's the only time. But it was a long time. And that's why I said I was over 3 weeks, almost going on 4 weeks late for my senior year.
That's amazing. Well, Cheney Studs is a name that anyone that played baseball in the Tacoma area certainly knew. How important was, you mentioned coaching for him as well, not only playing, but how important was that to you, playing for Cheney and being involved with the Cheney Studs?
It was great, because the thing about it is you never had to worry about, money. You never had to worry about equipment. We had the first cast, situation. When I was coaching him, I had no problems of getting any player that I wanted to, because all I had to do was call him up and tell him that I wanted them. And they knew Cheney, and they knew that if we won, we would go to the Nationals, and he'd pay for it. Where some of the other teams were concerned that if they ever won, they would not get back there. And and if I needed bats, I just went out to the hangar with Gene over in Gig Harbor there and pick up. We had dozens and dozens of bats and balls over there, and we had new uniforms consistently. I mean, we were not only the best team, but we were the best financed and the best looking team in the whole league.
How do you describe yourself as a player then?
Well, that's hard to say about yourself or something. I was fortunate enough, that people wanted me to play for them when I was in the amateur league and everything, and so I was blessed that I had the talent, I guess, to help teams win, and that was, I guess, I was fortunate. I don't know that I've ever played on too many losing teams in my career.
Well, it's amazing. National titles with the Studs and with Stanley's, as you mentioned, and also Tacoma Plywood as well in basketball. It wasn't just isolated to baseball. You were winning championships on the hardwood too.
Yeah, we did. I was MVP of the tournament back in Philadelphia when we won the national championship back there. So, and I was fortunate because I played with some really great individuals. In fact, our team was so balanced and everything that people would tell us back at the national tournament they had a tough time picking out who the all-stars were, because all of us had the same number of points. We had, and we just meshed together. We didn't have a lot of size except for Ted Werner, our center, but our forwards were like 6'4" and stuff like that, and Jim Van Beek and Clint Ames, myself, of course, both of us played at the U, and we just knew each other, and we knew what to do and how to compete. And that's one of the things that we had great guys that wanted to compete and they wanted to win.
Yeah, it says something about the talent in the area at the time when you can go cross country and win championships in basketball and baseball.
Yeah, people forget sometimes because you always think of the East Coast or the South or some, having all these great players and everything. But, you go back and look, and the people on the West Coast were doing just as well. I mean, in basketball, for instance, my junior year, we took second in the conference to California, and California ended up winning the NCAA championship that year. And there were only 16 teams. It isn't like now with 64, there was only 16. And the next 16 got to go to the NIT. The problem was we got an invitation but could not go because our presidents of the league only allowed the champion of the conference to go to a tournament. And today they would let everybody go because it's called money with the TV deals. But in that days, it wasn't money. It was costing money. So we lost a chance to play in Madison Square Garden. So I did.
That still has to sting a little bit.
Well, it does. But, I look back and our one road trip that I played when I was a sophomore was I played against Will Chamberlain on a Friday night. And on Saturday night, I played against Bob Boozer and Kansas State. Kansas the first night, both of them ranked in the top 10. And then on Monday, we went to St. Louis, who were also ranked in the top 10. And I played against Bob Ferry. And so, you go back, and I played against Paul Newman, who played at Stanford, and guys like that, and Emhoff, who played at California. So played a lot against them. Played against Rayford Johnson, the decathlon person, and stuff like that. And those are just a few names I can hit off the top. So I've been blessed.
I mean, I got to know more about playing against Will Chamberlain, who is one of the greatest basketball ever saw. What was it like playing against Will?
Well, he came out my freshman year. He came out to the UW, and so I got to see him play out there. And the funny story is, when we went back to Kansas the night before the game, we went out to a movie, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I turn around, and there's a big leg sitting right above my head. And I turn around and it's Will Chamberlain. He wasn't in class or studying. He was at the movie theater where we were. But, you know, he was phenomenal. I mean, you know, he's one of the great all-time athletes and everything. Interesting. What I always tell my kids this story was that we're playing them, and what happened was we threw the ball away, and they threw the ball down, and we're going on a fast break, and I was running back, and they threw the ball up, and I reached up and knocked it loose, and we got it back, and we went down. Well, about 3 minutes later, we had the same type of situation, and I'm going back on defense, and this guy throws the ball, and I jump as high as I can, and the ball's at least 2 to 3 feet above me, and I turn around and I see this arm catch it in midair and slam it, and that was Will Chamberlain running the floor. And I thought the ball was going out of bounds when I couldn't even get up close to it.
Well, there's not much you can do about that.
No, like I said, I've been blessed, you know, and playing against a lot of people. You know, I played professional baseball for 3 years after I got out of the UW and the Pirate organization. And, you know, I played against a lot of those guys who ended up playing in the majors. And even though we were in the lower minors at the time, but, you know, they were fortunate to go on.
At UW, you know, it's one thing to star in high school at a couple different sports, which you did obviously at Stadium and basketball and baseball. How difficult, though, was it at the college level to star in two different sports?
Well, put it this way, I turned out 50 out of 52 weeks during the year. I had 2 weeks off every year that the end of baseball season till I started summer baseball season. It was a little bit the first 2 weeks in June usually is when I had off. And other than that, I went from one to the other and so forth. But, you know, it was difficult, but like I said, I was fortunate, I guess, to have enough skills to be able to do both of those and do it. I was fortunate. I was elected captain in both sports as a senior. You know, I ended up signing, and I hurt my arm the year at the end of my junior year during the summer, and so I took part of my ability of throwing away. So when I signed, first time in my life I ever had a sore arm. I didn't know what those things were like because I could go out first day and throw as hard as I wanted and never understood what a sore arm was like. But that derailed me and made me understand a little more about other kids that were going through processes. But it also stopped me from having a chance to advance possibly more than I did in pro baseball.
So, like during basketball season, did you pick up a baseball at all to try and
Nope.
vice versa? Like during baseball, did you shoot at all,
Nope.
or did you just like pick up cold when the season started?
Picked up cold.
Wow.
An example is that we finished our basketball season, and I went out in the rain the following Monday. I took ground balls with rubber ground balls on the asphalt outside the stadium, and I hit the balls against the wall, the rubber balls, and then I jumped in a station wagon and drove to California to play in a baseball game.
That's not normal. People can't do that.
Well, yeah, you did what you have to do, you know, and like I said, I was good enough to be able to go out and do something, not as well after not having to turn out in baseball, but at least I was there and I could play defense and everything.
You mentioned how successful UW was on the basketball court when you were there. At one point, team was ranked as high as 19th in the country. What are your favorite memories from playing hoops at UW?
Well, you know, it's always the camaraderie that you had, you know, with the fellow players and everything. And I was fortunate I got to play with Clint, who he and I had played in high school together. He was a year younger than I was, and you know, the memories of traveling. You know, we got to play, go to Hawaii one time for a week and played 3 games over there. And they were just practice games right in the middle of the season of all things. But, you know, and, you know, you go back and reminisce, and I still, in fact, I'm supposed to have lunch with Al Murphy and Ron Crow, and who played there. I get together with Earl Irvine, and it's kind of funny. We get together with our sophomore team. Our freshman team. And we have for, I don't know, last 6-7 years during the summer, we get together with us, and we laugh because we used to go down and run the varsity team off the court because they couldn't fast break. And then after we did it a few times, Tippy would only let us come down and play defense.
Nice. It's remarkable looking at your career, and it seems like we're just talking about championships and everything else. And the same in baseball as well at UW. You guys won the first conference title in 25 years at the time. What are your fond memories about being on the diamond for the Huskies?
Well, that year we won that, and and our team got elected into the Husky Hall of Fame because of what we did that year. It's interesting because at that time it was the same thing in baseball. There were only a few teams that got to go to the Nationals, and we played Fresno State at 6 Seattle Stadium, and we lost the first game 3-2 in 10 innings, and then we won the next game, and then we lost the third game, and they went back and took third in the nation.
Wow.
The bad part about it was, no, I wouldn't say bad, but we had to go play Southern Cal, who had won the Southern Division. They were ineligible to play in the tournament, and we played them 2 games, and they absolutely killed us. They had 7 players off that team that played in the majors.
Wow, 7?
And 7, and they would have killed any team. They were hitting balls out of the ballpark. In fact, I told the coach one time, I said, "Do you mind if I go out and play over the outfield fence and see if I can catch some, because they're not hitting any ground balls to the shortstop from me." And but they were that good, and they would have won the national champion so easy because they were so much better than we were, and so much better than Fresno State. In fact, in the Fresno State game, I tried to steal home in the bottom of the 8th inning or 9th inning, and I got stopped by 1 inch from home plate. The catcher put a shin guard into my arm and stopped me. And the next day I couldn't throw. Oh. And so I ended up playing first base, the only time in my life I ever played first base. And it cost us because we won the next game pretty easy. And then the last game we lost in a slugfest. But unfortunately, our shortstop made 4 errors in the game for us in that game. And I would have been there, and I couldn't throw. I could swing the bat, I was fine, but I just couldn't throw.
Ah, that's too bad. You mentioned being in the Husky Hall of Fame and the team being in the Husky Hall of Fame. You're wearing your Husky sweatshirt right now. What does that mean to you to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, like my wife says, I bleed purple and gold. In fact, my 3 sons and I went to the championship game down in Houston. I told them I didn't care how much it cost. I said, once in a lifetime, you better do it. So we did it. And so, yeah, I bleed purple and gold, no question about it. I feel grateful for what they did for me. They paid my way through school, which I would never been able to do on my own without working all the time and saving money. So I was the first one in my family to graduate from college.
Wow.
So They did a lot for us. They made my life a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, it was an amazing career at Washington. Did you know, as your basketball career at Washington and baseball careers were unfolding, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do after school at that point?
Well, it's funny because when I went in, my counselor at high school called me in, and I didn't have any idea about college. Nothing. Nobody in my family had gone. I didn't know anything about it, whatever it was. And so she asked me a question. She said, "Are you going to plan on playing both sports at the UW?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "What do you plan on majoring in?" I said, "Engineering." All my friends were taking math and science, and I was taking it with them. And so they were all talking about going to be engineers. So I just told her engineering. And she said, "George, I don't know." She said, "They have a lot of lab classes and that. For you to play 2 sports, I don't know if you can do it." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll just major in business." And so I just told her I'd major in business. So that's what I did. I went there, and the thing probably I'm most proud of at the UW is that I graduated in 4 years.
That's amazing.
Which most athletes don't. But during my junior year, I decided that I wanted to teach and coach. So what I did is I still, because I was going to sign and play pro ball, I thought that the best thing would be to make sure I had my degree. So I finished that, but I started taking educational classes in anything that I could do in the junior year. And then I came back in 2 years during the off season in baseball and went to school for 2 quarters, and I coached the freshman basketball team. So they paid my tuition for me and gave me my $100 a month, which I had for my scholarship, to finish up the 4 quarters. And I'm sure a lot of it had to do with Marv Scott, who was my coach at Stadium. Excuse me. He did a lot to make sure that I got through school. And I think I want to just repay him. Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry at all.
So I think that's why I ended up being a teacher and a coach.
Paying it back, paying it forward.
Yeah. And of course, I played my last basketball game when I was 64 years old. I played constantly with the guys that were on our cheating club until we were in our 60s. We played at Lakewood in the 60 and over league. And then we gave it up there, and I played my last game at 64 with my church team. And then, of course, I had to start at 57 to play senior softball. And I played that till 83 and won at least 8 to 10 national championships there. So, like I said, I've been very blessed.
Were you still playing shortstop?
Yeah. Except that when you get to be 70, I moved over to what they call a middle infielder. They put you between short and second, and you cover both sides of that.
Growing up, was it always shortstop for you? Is that where you wanted to be?
No, I actually, when I first started, I was a pitcher in the under 12 league. In fact, the only reason I ended up being a shortstop is the guy I played high school ball, Gary Johnson, was a shortstop when I was pitching. And then he put me in the outfield when I didn't pitch. And I pitched a game, and we were tied 1-1 in the last inning, and the guy hit a ground ball to the shortstop to Gary, and it went through his legs. We came to turnout the next day, and the coach said, well, you play here, you play shortstop, Gary. And Gary said, I'm not playing there anymore. And said, who's going to play shortstop? I said, I will. That's how I started.
And that was it.
That's it. I played it from that point on.
That's incredible. And you mentioned in passing your 3 years in the Pirates organization. What do you remember about pro ball?
Long bus and station wagon drives, playing 7 days a week, lousy conditions. I left the U, and I had to buy my own sanitaries. I had to buy my own sweatshirt. I had to buy my everything except the pants and the top of the uniform and a hat. So it was a rude awakening.
Yeah, a little different.
Yeah.
You were teammates with Steve Blass, right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah. For people that don't know, Steve Blass played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, a tremendous pitcher with the Pirates, and helped them win the World Series. What do you remember about watching him on the mound as a teammate?
It's funny. He threw hard and everything else like that, but he was a young kid. I was 22 when I went out, and he was, young, and he pitched well for us. But I didn't realize, his development came after I was not with him when the year that I played with him. Because I saw other guys I played against and stuff like that, and end up playing in the majors, and you went, whoa. I can remember one guy played in the majors, and I went 4 for 4 off of him. And but the thing that was different when you played 7 days a week, you only recognized once in a while when guys threw harder than the average, because normally you kind of saw it was consistent. And they didn't have all the crazy pitches that they do nowadays.
Who do you remember playing against that ended up being in the majors? Like, who stands out when you think about your time back then?
What's the guy's name? Beckett. They played second base for the Chicago Cubs. There was a guy named started with MC, pitched in the majors. There were 4 or 5 guys that I remember that I played against, but I just can't call it up right now, name wise and everything. But I also, by the way, scouted for 7 years part time.
Really?
Yeah. And Ron Say played for me, and when I coached Cheney and everything. And so Ronnie and I know each other. And in fact, my one grandson played in the Little World Series, and they won in San Bernardino. And we were down there, and I called Ronnie, and he set me up with the lady to get some tickets. So we went over there in between on the one day to watch them play and everything. So, Ronnie, in fact, I went to a World Series, and Ronnie played in it, and a kid named Billy North played in it for Oakland.
Oh, yeah.
And he played in the league as well. And
wow.
We had like 3 kids off my Cheney team. I'm trying to think. Left-hand pitcher, 6'5", went to Lakes High School. His dad's a football coach there for years. George. This happens when you get to be almost 86 years old.
No, I mean, Ron Say and Bill North are 2 of the best baseball players to come out of the Pacific Northwest. They both had phenomenal careers.
Yes. Yeah, I know that. And I was fortunate enough to have Ronnie as a friend and coach him.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What do you remember about a young Ron Say? Did you know it at the time? Like, he could be the kind of major league career he ended up having? Is that something you could foresee?
Yeah, I did. Because he had the ability to hit and everything. He ran funny, and everybody called him
Penguin. Yeah.
But he was a good athlete at Mount Doma. He played football, basketball, and baseball. And when he went to the national tournament, that really helped him, because he really played well back there, and that's when he ended up being signed and everything. When he got exposed to other scouts. And that's when he signed with LA, because we didn't really have a scout out here in LA at the time. So, no, he had great power for as little as he was and as stocky as he was. He's hit a lot of home runs in the majors. So,
how long did you scout for the Pirates and the Dodgers? What was?
No, I scouted 1 year for the Dodgers. They called me, and I scouted the first year with them, and then I got a phone call from a guy from Philadelphia. And I scouted for them for the rest of the time until I quit. I scouted for them. I was a bird dog, and 2 big people that we signed were a kid named Larry Christensen, who was a pitcher for Philadelphia, and the other one was Sandberg.
Well, there you go.
There's a big story about Sandberg. When we were scouting him, I turned his name in, and everybody came to see him play and everything. But his dad, he was a quarterback, and he was going to play quarterback at Washington State. And his dad told him that he would not sign. And so he went ahead and every time we talked to him, wouldn't sign. And so Philadelphia drafted him anyway, and I can't remember, it was the 4th or 5th round to put him in. So then what they did is they took him back to Philadelphia and worked him out. And the owner, Carpenter, came out there and he was hitting the ball and he hit a few balls into the stands. And he wanted to know who the kid was. And he told him who he was. And he said, but we're not going to be able to sign him. And he said, why? And he said, because his dad said he's going to Washington State to play football. Carpenter looked at him. He said, you sign him. I don't care what it costs. And they signed him. And he did not go to Washington State and play football. And he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was a good sign.
Yeah.
What did you see from him when you scouted him in those early years?
He had great talent. You know, at that time he played shortstop. And of course, he moved to second base and everything. And that was always the question, is how strong his arm was. But, you know, he was an athlete. I mean, you know, they signed him as going to sign him as a quarterback in football. And you know that normally they're your best athlete. And he was playing shortstop, which is normally, again, a lot of times is your best athlete. And so he just had those attributes to be good.
I should say it was a great sign. It probably wasn't a great trade, though, for Philadelphia to the Cubs.
Well, you know, why that happened is because the guy who worked in the Philadelphia organization, Green, moved to Chicago as the general manager.
He knew.
And I met with Green down in Oregon a couple of times when we used to have some meetings, and he told us a story about that. As soon as he went over there, that's the first thing he did. He didn't care what he had to trade for him. He was getting him.
And he got one of the all-time greats. I mean, one of the greatest second basemen in the history of the game.
Yes. Yep.
That's incredible. And you were right there at the beginning.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Like I said, I've had a lot of great experiences.
Yeah, you have. So you ended up at Mount Rainier High School coaching. How far, how long after you ended your pro ball career were you at Mount Rainier High School?
I came back in September and I went to work for Boeing with my business degree for a year. And so I signed a contract in June of 1963, and there it was. And then I quit Boeing in September and went in at Cage, and that was tough because they offered me another raise because they thought I was going to another company, and I was already making $6,600, and I went back to teach for $5,400. And but you know, I wouldn't trade it. I probably would have made a lot more money at Boeing, but I had a lot more unbelievable experiences with kids.
Yeah, what did you like most about teaching and coaching?
The camaraderie and the enjoyment of seeing kids succeed. You know, put in hard work and get good results.
You had some really good basketball teams at Mount Rainier.
Yeah, we went to the state tournament in '71, lost the semifinal game in 4 overtimes, and my guard was sick on Friday and could hardly play, and an infection in his lymph nodes, it turned out, and they gave him antibiotics, but it didn't come out until Saturday. And then we came out and beat Nathan Hale by 35. And we set like 5 or 6 tournament records. The 4 overtimes is still the biggest one, but it won't be. We had the most points scored in the thing till the 3-pointers came in.
Wow.
And that changed it. And then we lost to Roosevelt in the finals of region, and we lost in double overtime in that game. So in the 2 overtime state tournaments, we lost in 6 overtimes. And of course, the next week, Roosevelt beat the final 2 teams by 25 points, both of them. And we had them beat in the first overtime. And anyway, like I said, no, I was fortunate enough to have some great kids.
So while and you became a principal later on, while you're coaching and teaching and being a principal, were you also playing this entire time too?
I was playing one, yeah. I was playing basketball. Hmm. Yeah. I was traveling in baseball. First few years I was teaching, I had to get permission to leave for 2 weeks to go back east. My,
How did
my
you
wife,
have time for it all?
my wife just said it, and over here, she was listening, and she just told the guy he was never home.
I was gonna say, I mean, teaching and coaching on its own, that's a lot of time commitment. And you're playing at the same time. That's amazing how you managed to do it all.
Yeah, well, it was hard. Fortunately, we had football season where I didn't have anything to do. But actually, the playing was my outlet. Being able to go out and clear your mind and run and come home tired as heck, and your mind was clear and never thought about anything else.
So I would like to know about the bottle of champagne you were in charge of. Can you tell me about that?
Well, when we won the Western Regionals with the Stanley Schumann in 1956, Doug MacArthur, I told you all the guys were 21 and older. So after we won, they all went out to have a few drinks and enjoy life. And of course, I'm 18, and so I would go back to the motel, and finally I go to bed, and I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear this rumbling in my room, and Doug comes in along with, there were two other guys with him, but I don't remember who it was, and he had a bottle of champagne and a deal, and he was not feeling anything too well at that time, and he just said to me, "Here, George, this is yours." And he said, "It's your job to keep this until we go to the Nationals. When we win that, we'll open it then." And he said, "You're the only one I can trust that won't try to drink it between now and then." And, we were fortunate enough to go back there, and we did win the national championship. And so they opened it and drank it after we won.
So you carried it around and kept it safe.
Yeah, put it in my ball bag.
Didn't break it. Didn't. That's great.
Yeah. You heard that from Mark.
Yeah. Inside there. Yeah. Mark knows. That's phenomenal. When you think back of everything you accomplished, which is so much, what are you most proud of?
Well, like I said, one of the things is that I graduated in 4 years playing two major sports, which was unheard of at the time. And so to me, that was a milestone accomplishment, being able to do the academics and that. And, and the other thing, I've done so many things that I just feel so blessed to still be able to walk around and at my age and still could have played and still can play golf and walk the golf course and with all the people I've played with and the camaraderie I've had with all these people has just been remarkable.
You mentioned Doug MacArthur a moment ago, another Tacoma sports legends. What are your memories of him?
Well, like I said, and tribute to him, everybody in Tacoma knew who Doug MacArthur was. If you played Little League sports or upper Dove sports, or you played, adult deals, or you were involved in coaching, he was the icon. He broadcast all these games. He fundraised for people. He did so much for the TAC for the kids in high school. Raising money and doing things like that. He coached the Cheney team. The Stanley Schumann team. He was just so involved, and he was so involved, I'm sure, up until the day that he passed away, because he was in his late 80s and 90s, and when I went to, they brought the Stanley Schumann team in again to the TAC. There's only 5 of us there, but he still had us recognized again. And he just did things like that to keep memories going. And like I said, he and Clay Huntington was another one that everybody knew. But Doug was, I think, even more so, because he never got out of it. he just stayed in tune with what was happening in athletics. He did a lot for UPS also. In fact, when I was playing high school, he was coaching the baseball team. So I don't know anyone that's done more than him, other than Mark.
Looking back on just thinking about like all the athletes that have gone through the University of Washington and all the athletes that have played in Pierce County, you were named 100 best athlete of the century in Tacoma and top 60 all time at Washington. And just think about all the thousands of athletes who have participated in both this county and in Washington. What does that mean to you to be honored like that?
Well, it's overwhelming in a lot of ways. You do it because you love it and the fun of it, and you don't really think about the reward situation, in the particular part. So when you are honored, you feel very humbled, in my mind. Because like I said, I received so many different honors and played on so many great teams with teammates and everything else like that. And it's almost embarrassing sometimes, that when I talk to my kids or whatever it is or something like that, and I try to be a little more humble in the situation, but it's hard. I came around, I guess, at the right time. Some way I was driven, and I'm sure it was because I came from a tough family life. So I was driven, I guess, to do the best I could. I was extremely competitive. I know that. And I didn't like losing. And, and fortunately, I played with a lot of guys that felt the same way. And so that's why we won.
That helps.
No, it does. It does, and to do it when you're in your 30s and stuff like that, it takes a lot more effort and to do that, because it's always funny. You turn out in high school 5 days a week, you turn out in college all year round, you do all these things, and then you go to AAU basketball, and we turn out once or twice, and then we go play games, and we play 2 games a week, and we never turn out, and then we come and turn out before we go to the national tournament, and you go and play, and you can run still and do these things, and then you start questioning, why did we turn out so much before?
Yeah.
I mean, they always tell you got to be in great shape, and yeah, but the problem is also that you are in better shape when you're younger. Later on, you're in good shape for your age and everything, but the guys you're playing are also in that same shape, because they haven't been turning out 5 days a week either, because they have families and work experience and what you're doing. And like you said, it's a tough balancing act. I'm grateful to my wife. She raised 4 boys with me. Actually, she raised 5 because of me. Because like she said, I did a lot of things that I wanted to do, and she was supportive of me, which I wouldn't have been able to do without it. Financially, I was fortunate enough that I played with teams that could pay their expenses, so I didn't have to pay for things. When we went to the national tournaments and stuff like that, and that always makes it easier as well. And so, like I said, there's a lot of pluses went on that made this happen.
If we walked around the George Grant house, would we see, are there some trophies? Have you kept anything over the years that's on display, or things you think about?
In the corner of my den in here, I've kept some things. All my trophies are all sitting in the garage, and I've tried to get my wife to give them away and so forth, because nobody wants them. They're really old and all this kind of stuff. And I've tried to do that. I've got some that are sitting, my captain ones are sitting up in my bedroom. I got some things in there, like I was selected as Oregon every year in baseball selected an outstanding player that they played against. And so I have a plaque from Oregon that I have.
Really?
Yeah. That I was
Wow.
selected in one of the years by them, and they presented it to me at halftime in a basketball game in Washington. And so I got this plaque, and so I've kept it. It's a nice plaque. I've got pictures of me in my basketball uniform and baseball uniform at the Huskies, and I've got some of my coaching books that a couple of my statisticians kept. My greatest statistician is a guy named Dwight Perry, who worked for the Seattle Times. And if you read Sunday's paper, he used to have the column in there for years, and he just retired. He was my statistician, and he was in my class.
Really?
And so Dwight went back when I was at Mount Rainier High School. We'd only been in existence about 8 years at the time, and he came in and asked me if he could take all the scorebooks home and go through them all. So he went back through all those, and he figured out every person who had scored, and he put them in order without now remember, this was without computers.
Yeah.
From the bottom 2 points up to the top of whatever it was. And so my statisticians every year had to insert all the new kids where they went in that sequence. And Dwight started that. And he was the most organized person I've ever been around, by far. By far.
I gotta say, I have never heard another team giving an award like Oregon did. I think that is the coolest. I can't imagine a higher honor than another team picking you out as the best player they've played against. That is really cool.
Well, that was for that year. Each year they picked someone.
No, that's amazing.
I was shocked. I didn't know they did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all of a sudden I got this plaque, and I thought, I want to beat Oregon. Of course, I could tell you one other quick story.
Please.
I've had you on here way longer, and I thought we were going to do this about 10 or 15 minutes. but it's a funny story indirectly. Is Marv Scott knew Al Kirsch, who was the baseball coach at Oregon. So he sent a letter down to Kirsch saying that you need to sign this guy. Anyway, what happened is that he wrote me back a nice letter and said that he only had half baseball scholarships and that he couldn't give me a full ride. So I wrote back and I said, thank you, but I have no money, no financial ability for help, and therefore I can't come. So anyway, the second year when I'm a sophomore, we're down at Oregon, and as I start to go on the basketball court, we were waiting outside and everything. I felt this push on my arm back here, and I turned it on. It was him. And the first thing he said to me, he said, why didn't you tell me that you were a basketball player? I could have gotten you a scholarship in both. And I said, well, considering I was an all-state baseball and an all-state basketball player in the state of Washington, I thought maybe you would know that. But see, in those days, they did not have the slightest idea. Yeah, now they know every kid when he's 15, 12 years old. And with all of the things going on with the internet and all these travel leagues and all this. But in that era, he didn't even know who I was as a basketball player. And yet I was an all-state basketball player. I was an all-state baseball player. I played in the all-state baseball game, at Six Seattle Stadium. And so it was just kind of humorous that's how different today's athletic ability of finding kids and people. And that's why you find athletes coming to Washington from all over the country. Now, when I played there, we were all from Washington. We had one kid that came up on his own from California. Every other kid was from the state of Washington in basketball.
That's amazing. Well, George, we have kept you for a long time, but the stories were wonderful. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much for all the time today. This was great.
Well, thank you and for doing it, and I really appreciate meeting you.
This was great to meet you as well. This concludes today's edition of the Locker Room Chat, brought to you by the Tacoma Pierce County Sports Museum and Rainier Asphalt and Concrete, the number one asphalt and concrete repair contractor in the Tacoma, Seattle area. For quality workmanship, top-notch customer service, contact Rainier Asphalt at rainierasphalt.com. Let them know you heard about them on Locker Room Chat.
Thanks.
Thank you, George.
Okay.
That was really great.